Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's planning commission meeting. Thank you for your patience. To those who had patience in getting here, I had the fun of having COVID over the holidays, which I don't recommend to anyone, but glad to be here now and getting these items taken care of. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First thing before we have my little chair instructions here, but I'm going to go off script here a little bit. We have a new member with us tonight, Tessa. Steve, I'll let you introduce Tessa.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, I'd like to just kind of mention that Emily Bear had left. Emily helped us out for quite some time. So she had an opportunity in Walla Walla. So just wanted to just acknowledge the work that she had put into us and appreciate that. Lucky for the planning department, we are able to get Tessa Fund. Some may recognize Tessa from as you come into City Hall and was working in finance. So we were pretty lucky. She has a good feel for a lot of the people. Been fantastic to work with. So appreciate having Tessa here, and she'll be around. And I want to also thank Jennifer Barrett a lot. Jen has a lot on her plate, and she's been very, very helpful in terms of helping us and other departments out with this transition. So just wanted to thank those guys.
Thanks.
Welcome. Yeah.
Tessa, are you still gonna be bailiff?
For the time being, yes. I'm happy to be here. Thank
These
you.
meetings are always easy. There's nothing really to report. A walk in the park.
Usually. Right.
Okay. May I have an approval of the agenda?
I have a question on the agenda. I'm wondering about the urgency of the zoning changes. Are we on a tight schedule on those, Steve?
Let's see, on the zone change for the police department.
And the conditional use, I'm sorry.
So I know city manager is here as well, but the hope is to move these along in a reasonable fashion. So they're on the agenda. We're looking to try to get some approvals, but so from my perspective, unless Bruce has something different to say, I think we're trying to move things along.
I just wonder how are you intending to present that? Are we gonna have a speaker and
Yes.
go through the history of the site selection?
Sure. So CETA is the architect who is working on behalf of the city, and they are going to present some presentations by Zoom this evening. So they'll go through each of the applications that's before you this evening.
I just appreciate a little flexibility if the meeting drags on to dispense with one, perhaps both, depending on how things go as the meeting goes along. I mean, I could see one of those discussions going on for several hours or a couple hours.
Well, why don't we cross that bridge as we move along with each of the items? I mean, I think it's worth a discussion on each point, but sitting here now, I don't think I could
No,
move the agenda.
I agree. I'm just requesting the flexibility at some point to come back and
Let's
revisit.
revisit.
Up that opportunity.
So any other comments on the agenda? All right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So I had Commissioner Bates, but who was the second?
Did you motion to?
Nobody's motioned yet.
Oh, I thought, okay, sorry.
It was a question.
You want to just?
Yeah, I move we approve the agenda.
And I'll second it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sold. Any discussion?
All right.
Then, Jen, do you want to call the roll? Or Tessa, you want to?
I'm gonna do it tonight.
You're doing it tonight. Okay,
And then
got it.
she'll be here.
Not on the spot.
It'll be Tessa.
Got it.
Commissioner Matusik,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Commissioner Varro,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ostrander,
Yes.
Chair Newton.
Yes. Moving back to our minutes from October 26th and November 1st. Are there any amendments to those minutes?
None.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, Jen, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Moritz, Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ostrander,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusik,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Newman.
Yes. Okay, moving right along. This is a quasi judicial hearing regarding public hearing CU 23-04 Red Crow LLC on behalf of Patrick Dave LLC for a conditional use permit. 2304 Red Crow LLC, Jamie Lerma, application on behalf of Patrick Dave LLC for a conditional use permit for the purpose of creating a private use boardwalk spanning and delineating a wetland and its buffer area. The property is located on Forest Lawn Road, tax lot 5103, DA 4100, and is zoned R2 residential medium density. The request will be reviewed under Municipal Code Section 17.80, conditional uses. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias? Has any commission member had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit?
Last time?
Site visit.
Yeah.
Anytime, yes.
Visited this site.
Site visit.
May we have the staff report?
Yes, good evening. The applicant, Jamie Lerma of Red Crow LLC, on behalf of property owner Patrick Dave LLC, requests the installation of a private use boardwalk that will span a portion of the subject property's wetland and its buffer area for the purpose of providing access to planned residential development on that property. Information regarding the design of the proposed boardwalk is included in Exhibit A2, and its location is shown on the site plan. Information regarding the proposed residential development to be supported by the walkway on this application is included in the exhibits. Residential development, including detached two-family dwellings, is a permitted use in the residential medium-density R2 zoning district. Additionally, the applicant has submitted an application for a type 2 development permit for excavation and grading in conjunction with this application. Material from the type 2 application has been included to provide further context to this proposal. During its October 2023 public hearing, the Planning Commission denied a similar application, CU 2302, for a pedestrian walkway as it found the walkway met the definition of an accessory structure and was subject to setback requirements. This application differs from CU 2302 in the placement of the walkway, which has been moved 5 feet north of the property line with tax lot 51030 DA 04104. Moving into the applicable criteria, the wetlands overlay zone requirements for 1743-045G footpaths. Those are a conditional use and permitted conditional uses and activities permitted in wetland buffer areas. The staff comment is the provision of the municipal code indicates that access improvements such as roads, driveways, and footpaths within a wetland and its buffer area are subject to conditional use review by conditional use review. The city made this finding during its administrative review of development permit BP 2328, and the Planning Commission made a similar finding during its review of CU 2302. The two access improvement applications that precede this application. Moving into 1743-050J, general standards. The staff comment is that the planned residential development that will be supported by the walkway proposed in this application is permitted use in the underlying R2 residential moderate density zoning classification. Duplex or two-family dwellings are defined as a building or buildings containing two dwelling units with or without a common wall or ceiling and where there are not direct interior connecting doorways. Due to a plat restriction, the applicant is unable to establish access to the upland portion of the site from South Hemlock Street and must access the property from Forest Lawn Drive. In application DP 2328, the city found that the natural terrain of the proposed walkway was unsuitable as a walkway and that fill would be required for this purpose. The June 20th, 2023 Todd Prager and Associates report stated, quote, private access adjacent to trees 16 and 18 should be constructed under arborist supervision without excavation below existing grade. At least 4 inches of base rock over geotextile fabric shall be placed over exposed surface roots to protect them from damage, close quote. The access arrangement proposed in this application would avoid the placement of fill or other material in the wetland or its buffer area by providing an elevated walkway that would span the wetland affected area. Use of a pedestrian walkway versus a vehicle bridge limits the size of the area being impacted by the proposed improvement and largely avoids the potential for improvement to need to span the delineated wetland area. Excuse me. Moving into section 1743.050, which addresses footpaths and bicycle paths. Staff comment is the proposed pedestrian access will avoid use of fill material and be constructed in the buffer area in order to avoid traversing the delineated wetland site. It is positioned in a way that satisfies the placement preferences established in item number 3. And item number 3 of this criteria states, quote, routes for new footpaths shall be chosen to avoid traversing protected wetlands. Footpaths around the perimeter of protected wetlands and in wetland buffer areas are preferred, close quote. Moving into the criteria for conditional uses found in chapter 1780. In overall use standards, regarding the demand for use existing at the site, staff comment is the proposed boardwalk will provide a legal means of access to the upland portion of the subject property and allow for planned residential development of the property to take place. At present, there is no means of access to the upland portion of the property as a plat restriction requires access to come from Forest Lawn Road. The proposed boardwalk would provide access for residents, guests, emergency services, and other parties who may need to access the property. Item B, regarding traffic or congestion. The staff comment is the proposed use on this application of pedestrian access walkway does not appear to have any apparent impact on traffic, public facilities, or fire protection. Residential development that would be supported by the proposed walkway will be reviewed by City Community Development, Public Works staff, as well as the Cannon Beach Rural Fire Protection District in order to ensure that such development does not have significant negative impacts or create an overburden on the items detailed in this criterion. Moving into item C regarding the adequate amount of space for yards, buildings, drives. The staff comment is that the proposed use on this application, a pedestrian access walkway, appears to satisfy this criterion by allowing the planned residential development to be arranged in a way that places structures, parking on the upland portions of the property. As shown in Exhibit A3, off-street parking would be provided in 2 areas on upland portions of the subject property adjacent to Forest Lawn Road. One of these parking areas includes a detached garage. The proposal responds to the findings of the Planning Commission from its review in CU 2302, which found the walkway to be an accessory structure subject to setback requirements. This proposal has shifted the location of the walkway 5 feet to the north in order to comply with side yard setbacks and provide a buffer to the adjacent property to the south. Moving into criteria D, regarding the topography, soils, and other physical characteristics of the site. The staff comment is that the proposed walkway will address this criterion by placing the footings in the upland portion on either side of the buffer area that it will span. No portion of the structure will penetrate the soils in the wetland area or its buffer area. And criterion E, regarding an adequate site layout for transportation and activities. This criterion does not apply to the application. Generally, the consideration detailed in this criterion applies to commercial or high-density residential uses, which may generate a high level of traffic. And criterion F, regarding the site and building design that will be compatible with the surrounding area. The staff comment is that the uses surrounding the subject property are detached, single-family dwellings on lots larger than 5,000 square feet. The planned residential development that would be supported by this proposal is consistent with that level of development. And that concludes the staff report.
Rob? I assume this is it in terms of additional correspondence. What's in this packet? Did everyone have a chance to look at the additional correspondence? Okay, great. We'll move into public testimony. We're moving into public testimony. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The Planning Commission shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony. The persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes.
Please come forward.
Jim DeLoma, Lots 85 Canopy Golden. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. You've got the application, it's on record, so I addressed most of the criteria in that, but I'm going to review some of that here now. And I'll also address some of the correspondence that we received as of 3 o'clock this afternoon. I don't think anything came in after 3. We submitted a conditional use permit application for a 26-foot long, 4.5-foot wide private access boardwalk produced by owners of a 2-family attached dwelling proposed on the property. The underlying use as a 2-family detached home site is an outright approved use. The boardwalk will have piers and footings upland and will span wetland buffer zone and wetland. There will be no construction in the wetland buffer or the wetland. The boardwalk will allow free flow of water and is supported by our project wetland scientists as a means of access that will have no adverse impact on the wetlands or the wetland buffer. The boardwalk is positioned 5 foot 6 inches from the southern property line and so meets the side yard setback requirement. The boardwalk area is 117 square feet and so it's in compliance with the code maximum size for an accessory structure. This permit application is a revision of CU 2302, which was denied by the Planning Commission on October 26, 2023. The current application addresses the basis for that denial by placing the boardwalk outside of the 5-yard setback. It also provides the Planning Commission with additional requests and information about the underlying development, including a revised site plan, floor plans for the proposed 2-family and floor plans for the proposed 2-family detached dwellings. In support of this conditional use permit, the following information has been submitted to the Planning Commission. This is part of our type 2 development permit. We submitted a site plan showing the location of proposed dwellings, the garage, the boardwalk, and construction access area. We submitted a tree report by arborist Todd Frager and Associates specifying tree removal and protection for the site. We submitted a geotechnical report and supplemental report by Earth Engineers. We submitted a wetland delineation by Pacific Habitat Services with DSL concurrence and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdictional determination. We submitted a utility plan by Jason Morgan of Morgan Civil Engineering. We submitted a temporary construction access support letter from City of Cannon Beach Public Works Director Karen Labonte. And then as part of our conditional use permit application, we have submitted floor plans for the proposed underlying 2-family detached home. We've submitted plans for the proposed boardwalk with an optional railing. And we've submitted a support letter for the proposed boardwalk for wetland scientist John Van Stavern and Pacific Habitat. In addition to that information, we've also submitted to the Design Review Board design schematics, including building elevations, construction material information, lighting information, and a tree replanting plan. And that's all a matter of public record. So based on those submissions, we believe that the Planning Commission has sufficient evidence to make a decision on this conditional use permit application tonight. Like I said, as of 3 p.m. today, there were some additional comments, and since we can't confirm what direction the meeting might take once the public comment is closed, I'd like to address those. Starting with Exhibit C5, which is correspondence from Commissioner Bates dated December 14th, 2023. In his correspondence, Commissioner Bates makes reference to lot coverage and the intent of the code for the underlying R2 zone. Regarding the lot coverage, the maximum lot coverage in R2 zone is 50%. This property is 1.1 acres or 47,916 square feet. The total area of the building footprints is 2,747 square feet. And this results in a lot coverage of 5.7%, which is well below the 50%. If we change that calculation to include only the upland portion of the lot, there are 18,500 square feet of upland area on the lot. And that would change our lot coverage to 14.8%, still well below the 50% maximum. If we extend this to the floor area ratio, the maximum in the R2 zone is 0.6. The total living area for both of the dwellings is 3,932 square feet. That gives us a FAR of 8.2%. Or 21.2% if we just use the upland portion. So we're well below those standards, those maximums. And regarding the Commissioner Bates's position that the commission should deny the conditional use application based on his interpretation of the intent of the language of the underlying R2 zone, we believe the language of the code is clear. A detached two-family dwelling is an outright allowed use. The city's professional staff is in agreement with this reading. Neither of our type 2 developments, permit applications have been flagged for being inconsistent or incompatible with the R2 zone. That only came up in this email that Commissioner Bates sent. Finally, our attorneys have drafted a letter to planning commissioner to the planning commission stating our legal position regarding why we think that Commissioner Bates's argument fails on a legal basis. And that's part of it. We also received exhibit D1 correspondence from Forest Lawn Road property owner William Reisgard dated December 4th, 2023. In his email, he makes reference to violating delineated wetlands and some kind of non-specific information being covered up. So I went through the list of the documents provided today, all done by experienced professionals regarding this project, all part of the public record. And those include, as I stated, the wetland delineation, the DSL concurrence and Army Corps of Engineers jurisdictional determination. And there is no construction activity proposed whatsoever in the wetland or the wetland buffer. In exhibit D2, there's correspondence from Andrew Morrow, who is a former attorney who says he visits Cannon Beach frequently. Mr. Morrow questions the underlying R2 zone again and whether a two-family detached home is an outright allowed use. And I'll just reiterate that City of Cannon Beach professional staff have determined in both of our type 2 applications that a two-family detached home is an outright allowed use. And also that the purpose of this hearing is a conditional use permit. And I'm curious, just as an aside, if there are any standards for who has standing in these meetings. I mean, it seems so it's down every once in a while, being loose standard. But I'll continue. In his second item of his letter, Mr. Morrow states that there's not enough information in our bridge design and site plan to confirm that the proposed structure is 117 square feet. The structure is 4.5 feet wide by 26 feet long for a total of 117 square feet. This information is contained on both our site plan and our boardwalk design and has been supplemented by project designer Jay Orloff with some further detail. If there's concern about the boardwalk being constructed larger than 120 square feet, it can be the conditional use permit can be approved with a condition stating that it needs to meet the 120 square foot maximum, or be beneath the 120 square foot maximum. And that kind of condition is common too. For example, height restrictions where it says on the plans not to exceed a certain height. Do that all the time. This would be something similar to that. Mr. Morrow goes on to state about concerns about the optional railing that we showed on the plans. The railings are not required for elevated surfaces less than 30 inches above the ground. The boardwalk is designed at 8 inches above the ground. And regarding the area of the boardwalk, in calculations of areas for decks and walkways, they don't consider the railing. So as long as we don't violate the setback, then I don't think the railing is an issue. Regarding Mr. Morrow's concerns about project engineering for the boardwalk, a full geotechnical report has been submitted as part of the type 2 development permit. And all construction will be in compliance with geotechnical and structural engineering requirements and will follow the conditions of the city of Cannon Beach building permit for the boardwalk. The site is suitable for construction of houses, so the boardwalk is much smaller and lighter. Can't construct. Regarding contemporary construction access, we have support from the city of Cannon Beach Public Works Director upon approval of the building permits. There are many construction projects in the city of Cannon Beach that access their sites off of South Hemlock Street. Temporary construction access and other right-of-way provisions for development are the rule and not the exception in Cannon Beach. The city does not prohibit development projects, whether residential, commercial, or new construction or remodels based on traffic impact. Access plans are developed in conjunction with Public Works and other city departments. And we will meet whatever requirements and restrictions are placed on traffic, including impacts on pedestrians and elks, as Mr. Morrow points out. We should also consider that the plat restriction does not specifically prohibit access to South Hemlock. It restricts access to Forest Lawn Road. It doesn't mention South Hemlock at all. At the time, the plat restriction in 2001, there was no residence at 1603 Forest Lawn Road. That residence was built in 2005. And during the 18 years between 2005 and 2023, in violation of the city of Cannon Beach building permit condition to contain stormwater on site, it drained its roof drains and foundation drains onto the Piecta property, creating the protected wetland and blocking access to the uplands of that site from Forest Lawn Road. So that construction access and the fact that we can't access off of Forest Lawn Road is because of that improper draining that was done onto the property for 18 years. Mr. Morrow makes a comment on construction management in item number 6 of his letter. I think that those comments are outside the parameters of this hearing, but I'll say that construction staging and scheduling will be in compliance with wetland and tree protection requirements will be conducted under the supervision of qualified professionals, including the city of Cannon Beach building official, community development staff, professional, structural, and geotechnical engineers, the project master arborist, the project wetland scientist, the project designer, Jay Orloff, and myself. He makes some comments in his final point about setbacks and the proposed bridge boardwalk meets all the R2 setback requirements. Finally, we have a correspondence from Rosie Dorsey, who owns the 2,529 square foot short-term rental immediately south of the Piecta property. She has many concerns about the impact of the development on adjacent property. And they're common concerns. The proposed boardwalk will have no impact on the use of her home as a short-term rental or as an eventual place for her to retire. Nor does the boardwalk require any action on her part. As I stated before, 18 years between 2005 and 2023, the house at 1603 Forest Lawn Road, which was owned by Mrs. Dorsey or her family, that entire time without permission and against the requirements of her building permit, discharged its rain drains and foundation drains onto the property, creating the wetland that we're now having to traverse with a boardwalk and a conditional use permit. I think the answers to all of the questions in her email can be found in the CUP type 2 and design review applications that are all public record. I think that we've given you all the information that you need to make a decision on this conditional use permit tonight. I hope you approve it. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Lerma?
I had one question. I think it'd be best for him. Our packet page numbers are going to be funky compared to what you submitted, but let's see if I can figure out which. It's page 22 and page 28 of our packet, but I don't know. Exhibit A2, which shows the cross sections of the boardwalk. Show that it's 4'6" wide on that. But then on our page 28, which is it's called. It's the site, it's the full site plan of the property, exhibit A3.
Okay,
Shows that the boardwalk is 5 feet wide. Is there,
I'm gonna defer to Jay to Jay Orloff on that, but I think it's 4'6" wide.
We'll go
And that
over
was-
details, guys. The 5 foot is probably notational here on the section.
okay, because it was there and then additionally it was down like another 20 pages down or so when it was the access site plan as well. It was in that,
Correct. I'll
showing 5 feet.
base on my 4'6" on the detailed drawings.
Jamie, I had a quick question. Just want to make sure I'm clear. You were talking about the access off of Hemlock and that being questionable as to how that is interpreted. Your question or concern about that has to do with what's before us tonight. That's construction access off Hemlock. Is that correct?
That's not before you tonight. That was brought up in some of the correspondence. And since I don't know which way this meeting is going to go, I thought I would address it now while I have a chance.
Got it.
Yeah, and I was talking about construction access only off of Hemlock.
Yeah. I did see the memo from Karen talking about that, and I assumed that was the reference you're making.
Yes.
I thought it was a part of what we're considering. Okay, thank you.
But you do need that construction access for this boardwalk project too, right?
We do need this.
So that will be part of this application.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other presentations by your team, by the applicant?
No.
Are there presentations by proponents? No hands up, okay. Are there presentations by opponents? Please come forward.
I'm Jan Siebert Warmond, P O Box 778 Cannon-Beat, 97110. Dear Planning Commissioners, I have questions and concerns regarding CU 23-04 Red Crow LLC's application on behalf of Patrick David LLC for a conditional use permit. Access to the property from Hemlock Street, as I understand it, is not allowed. What is the legal process to change that restricted access? How is that determined? How is construction access legally different than access by residents? We know that Hemlock Street in this area is a dangerous one. I've heard it is also an Oregon coast bike route that ODOT strongly recommends riders follow in this area rather than using Highway 101. I am concerned about construction traffic being added to this area along with other traffic already there. It appears some of the signatures on the application were dated after the application was received by the city. How was the application accepted before it was even signed by the applicant and/or the property owner? For example, it was received on November 28th, 2023, but wasn't signed until the following day. While researching the history of this wetlands lot of record and various development plans there, I noticed that the October 2023 Planning Commission agenda and packet seems to be missing from the city website now. Where did these go? It is with these questions and concerns that I ask you to deny this application or at least to continue the public hearing to get more information if you believe it will help you in making your decision. Our wetlands and wetlands lots of record need protection wherever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there presentations by additional opponents?
We have one on Zoom.
Okay, let's go to Andy Morrow.
Thank you. I don't know whether you can.
Yeah, we've got you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to, obviously you've seen my written comments. First of all, I should say it's Andrew John Morrow Jr. I live at 1221 Southwest 10th Avenue, Unit 811, Portland 97205. I wanted to make one additional comment with respect to some of the comments that Mr. Lerma made. My concern with respect to both the access restriction and with the definition of what is a duplex for this purpose, really, he points to the staff comments, but the decision as to what the city meant with respect to their definition of a duplex and permitting that in an R2 zone, and the question of what does the access restriction regarding South Hemlock mean, are both functions that are legislative in nature and are appropriate for the Planning Commission to decide. They're not administrative issues that should be decided at the staff level. So I would urge you to consider both of those items. Mr. Lerma commented on the restriction. I have a copy of it here, and I will try and read it because I got a magnifying glass to do it. Access to parcels 1, 2, and 3, which are the 3 lots that are created by that partition, is restricted to Forest Lawn Road only until such future, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can read all of this. Future action, I'm not, the restriction is modified by the city of Cannon Beach. I'm sorry, I can't read all the words, but it is a restriction. It restricts access to these lots to Forest Lawn Road only. And as I said, I think the interpretation of what access means for purposes of this restriction, and if necessary, modifying it, is a legislative function, not a staff function. And again, the issue with respect to the whether this really is a duplex is also appropriately a question that's before the Planning Commission, not a staff question. As I pointed out, there is information in the record. It comes from a letter from the Developers Council that the intention is to sell these units separately. As I pointed out, I don't think that can legally be done through a joint ownership process because of a limitation in the city's code. And I don't think it is intended that a duplex is something that can be sold outright as two separate residences. I think that's probably all I should say at this point, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there a specific section in our code that you can direct us to that says that could not happen? But
I think I put it in my letter. Let me put it.
okay, thank you.
There is, Code Section 179170 states that individual dwelling units of a duplex may not be sold as separate property. What I'm addressing there is, in order to keep this as a one owner property, I think the intention was to create some kind of a joint ownership unit, essentially a homeowners association that owns the whole project. And then by contract creates a right of each unit holder through that contract to have exclusive access to their particular unit. And that really is the transfer of that unit as personal property, because the ownership interest in the entity itself is personal property. I should add, this is the one area in this that I'm not a lawyer familiar with land use, but I am familiar with business organization law. I was the chair of the Oregon State Bar's business law section for two times, and represented the section in legislative matters, including corporation law, business organization law, for a number of sessions. So I think I have some ability to speak to this issue.
Are there other questions for Mr. Morrow? Thank you, Mr. Morrow.
Thank you.
Are there other proponents that would like to speak? I'll give you proponents still. I said proponents, excuse me. Proponents. I can't, it's not even late. I can't blame it on that. Are there other opponents that would like to speak? Okay, with that, would the applicant like to respond to this? Please come forward.
I guess my response would be that, based on the agenda and the status of our development permit applications, this is a conditional use permit hearing. And I'd like us to address that issue if we could stick to that. I guess I would also say that if, it sounds like if this argument prevails, that what the planning commission would be advocating for, would be supporting them, would be a single unit on that property, which would have to be a substantial size and expensive home, which is fine, I guess. That's the direction you want to take it, but it would also still need a conditional use permit to access it for any allowed use there. Unless you're saying this property does not have any way to be developed because of the plat restriction and the wetland. For the last 15 years. Thank you.
Just a quick question while you're up there. So whether it's 4 units or 2, if you have the same footprint, you're okay. If we decide that our purview does include considering what's being built there, you're saying you'd be okay with a couple big houses?
Well, I think it would be 2 footprints or 1 is what our options would be, because other than the detached 2-family home, the only other use I think that would be allowable there would be a single home. Whatever was constructed is going to have access via this boardwalk that we're here to consider tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else on your team like to respond? Any proponents? Okay. That in mind, we will close the public hearing and move to consideration. Would like to lead off.
Well, so my first thought or comment on that is very much in line with what Mr. Lerman just commented, is that no matter what's built there, access has to be made across this, and the application in front of us, as far as I understand, is the conditional use of this boardwalk. That's specifically what's what's being asked of us tonight, and the other part of the construction is background information for us of why he needs conditional access.
I don't agree. I don't agree. I would like it to just be about the boardwalk and it would be a simple decision. I think Mr. Lerman has done a good job of accommodating the entire community and trying to minimize the impact to the wetland. But we have more to evaluate whether or not they meet setback requirements. In fact, you know, the city's done a pretty good job of laying out our criteria. And one of them is there a demand? And in this case, they premised the demand on a package that I believe Mr. Morrow believes, but I'm concerned, I guess, cannot be approved without planning commission review first and approval. And it would have to be as a variance,
Okay.
right? If they can't go out with this house as under common ownership, with these structures under common ownership, then they need to come in for a variance. And we have no way of deciding whether that gets accomplished, because as soon as we approve this, Steve and Robert are going to go ahead and approve that development permit, and it's going to go out as it currently stands. So at this point, I don't believe they have a development package that can be approved without coming to the planning commission. And therefore, there is no demand for this place, this bridge at this time.
And why couldn't we approve the request tonight with conditions, Mike?
Well, play it out, Aaron. Play out the conditions. So, yeah, we'll approve this as long as there's a deed restriction on the property that restricts ownership of these buildings to one person. You know, assuming that they would agree with it. And you know, as of right now, I don't think they would. At that point, anything can happen. The bridge is built, the property is up, and then the citizens of the community have no recourse. Now, you know, the other thing we could do is just take a chance and have somebody go and appeal the development package, but that just means somebody has to spend $600 to come in and say what is obvious right here in this meeting.
I'm a little worried about holding a permit hostage in essence to create an opportunity for community input. And as much as I am in favor of community input, I am concerned if our purpose in doing this is to hold up another permit that we think is wrong. I think we need to really remember this is a conditional use permit for a boardwalk. Address our concerns tonight about that boardwalk and this application, but I personally am worried about us essentially saying that we're not going to approve this merely because we have concerns about the development permit, which is not before us.
Well, we have an obligation.
Said that he might be able to put in one building, but ultimately, if this is conditioned on approval of a development permit, that permit has an opportunity to be appealed, and that's the appropriate pathway for dealing with concerns about the development permit, rather than using this as a backward way to hold up the development permit.
I would accept your position either way. You know, I will be in front of the line appealing it if it goes out, but.
Right. So Mike, so that begs the question. I mean, how about your conflict of interest here? I mean, it seems like there's a clear conflict. You're going to be at the front of the line appealing. So how are you able to be a neutral arbiter in this process?
I'm very neutral in that I believe that as a matter of, Aaron, let me finish. As a matter of law, I have an obligation as trier of fact to determine whether there's a demand for this project.
The questions asked at the beginning of the process, do you have a conflict? And I didn't hear you speak up. You're basically saying,
let me inform you, Aaron, what the obligation is. Can I apply the code as it's written? Have you heard me say anything that
I think Mickey just made this. Mickey just made a very strong, poignant argument that yes, that's exactly what you're doing.
That's not it.
Okay.
I think it might have been a loose statement. I don't think you conflicted out here. You don't have any financial interest. But that said, I would side with what you said, Mickey. I think we are right on the line of holding this hostage. But you said hash out some of the issues, and Aaron, you
that I do
suggested
want
that
to do.
too.
Yes.
So if we have access issues or we have issues about ownership, maybe we hash those out here.
And well, there's one other point I want to make. Thank you. Thank you. And as I said, I was willing to accept Mickey's proposition. I don't think the city can go and approve a temporary restriction to this plat, that's going to go on, by the way, for 12 months, 18 months, 16 months, without having to go back to the council. Because last time this was heard, the council said they have no interest in changing it.
Is that a Bill question?
So I'm a little confused because I wasn't at the previous meeting which was discussed. Are we not concerned that to approve this use permit, we have to also essentially by default approve access from Hemlock?
I think that is a concern for me. But
So I would like to hash that out because that is to me very concerning.
Well, in my mind anyway, it's a question of, do you have trucks over a wetland or trucks off of Hemlock? And, if I had to vote, I'd say, let's give a temporary, just so we don't have to put trucks over
I
that
think my
wetland.
concern would be, does it remain temporary? So I would like
Yeah,
to
for
see a
sure.
condition that says afterward, there are bollards in place or boulders in place, depending on whether fire access is required. I don't want to see this become a de facto residential access simply because it's not closed back up afterward. So as long as there's a condition that it is somehow closed after construction.
We could put time on it and
Yeah.
close it.
That's a wonderful opportunity to address part of it, but we're not addressing what the ramifications are to the citizens living in the area and who drive in that area with trucks coming in and out of a pretty challenging part of Hemlock.
So I think though, as Clay started to address, I don't think that we can deny all access to a property such that the property is not usable by the owner. And Bill's the one to answer this for certain. But my concern would be that the city can't say we're tying up this property so you can never do anything with it. If that's the case, I would rather see access off of Hemlock that doesn't cross over a wetland.
So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't, basically.
But you have to address Mr. Morrow's issue. Who makes that decision?
That's a question.
Oh,
for
he
sure.
said it's a legislative issue and we're
That's a question.
legislators on it. Yeah, I think he's right. I think it's part of the legislative issue and I think it's one of the items we could address tonight.
Can we hear from
Sure.
Bill on this?
Bill's here, yeah. Bill, you listening in here?
I am, and thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I guess the question of who has authority on the allowing temporary access, I'd take a look start with the language of the restriction, as Mr. Morrow indicated. Access to parcels 1, 2, and 3 is restricted to Forest Lawn Road only until such future time that said restriction is modified by the City of Cannon Beach. The plat note itself doesn't really provide much. However, if you look at it says the city gets to make that decision. When you look at the city's code, and what I'm doing now is looking through trying to find the location. My memory is that access, is it 1208? Essentially, find the access. 1208.030, 12.08, 020 prior to construction improvement of driveway or driveway approach. Property owner show a plan showing the proposed alteration construction, and it's a duty of the Public Works Director to examine the plan, site improvements, determine substantial compliance. So the code has delegated that authority. The code, which is the ordinances adopted by the City Council, has delegated that authority to the city's Public Works Director as far as how to deal with access. The Planning Commission, in its role of reviewing this particular application, can determine whether or not certain things are permissible. Ultimately, when the application comes into the city about how access is accomplished, the City Council has delegated that authority to the Public Works Director.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill?
What happens, Bill, when the city administrators ask the council and they say no? What happens to that delegation?
I'm not certain I understand the question. If the Public Works Director an application comes to the Public Works Director and the Public Works Director goes to the council saying, I've received this application and I am considering it, do you have input?
And they say no. No, I do not approve it.
So at this point, they can amend their ordinances to change that delegation. Right now, the Public Works Director has authority. I haven't looked in whether that's appealable up to the City Council or to the Planning Commission. I don't believe it's appealable. Robert or Steve might have some input on that as well. But to the extent a city administrative person who is operating under delegated authority is not acting consistent with the City Council's wishes, and there isn't an appeal process, then it would be the City Council they don't have direct supervisory authority. They have direct supervisory authority with the city manager, can have a discussion with the city manager about the appropriateness of those actions.
It sounds like Karen doesn't need the council to approve it.
Who knows? Who knows?
We can make it a condition. We have that. I think that's in our purview. Any other questions for Bill? It seems like a couple pieces here that are important to, I'm not sure how we would handle the bit about ownership if we put that as a condition. Guess I might have a question for Bill.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, sorry. The issue around ownership of these units is more complicated than my pay grade. I'm hoping it's in your purview.
Well, I'll tell you my read of the ordinances and the statutes that we have. So when you deal with duplexes, the idea of most zoning codes, and we'll leave aside multifamily for a moment, this is residential low density, and we'll leave aside current changes to Oregon state law, is that you get one dwelling for one lot, and ADUs or other things. And so when a duplex comes in, it's essentially two dwellings on one lot. Under Oregon real estate law, you cannot sell a portion of a legal lot, right? It's got to be partitioned and create two lots, and then it's no longer a duplex and you can sell it. So when we look at what the duplex standard says, it is the individual dwelling units of a duplex may not be sold as separate personal property. Yeah, I have not gone back and looked at the history of where this duplex standard comes from, but in terms of what I read, that is, I think that the use of the word personal property is pretty significant, because if you can't sell real property because it isn't divided, there might be a temptation to sell it as non-legal property. So as one lot, you can't sell an individual property separately as a separate piece of real property. This is saying you can't sell it as separate personal property. So you can't have some type of arrangement where you sell off the duplex. Overlaying all of that personal real property differential is the Oregon State Condominium Code that allows people to take large pieces of property and units and create separate units out of them. And under the Oregon Condominium Code, which the city does not control condozation of codes, the condo law allows for the creation of separate units within a legal lot within a lot that would otherwise not be divisible and sold separately. And the condominium law, ORS Chapter 100, says that when you create a condominium and create units in it, the units in the condominium are considered real property under that law. That the city has been preempted, there's express preemption of the city ability to control condominiums.
Bill, we lost you there at control condominiums. You cut out off.
Can we just get him on the phone perhaps?
Let's give him a chance here. Still don't have you. Must be a cloud front coming over.
Spectrum did drop off at one point earlier today. So we have CenturyLink is what we use for the city, correct?
I think
So
there's
we have
Spectrum.
internet.
No, we use Spectrum and we use that.
Make your life easier.
We're not on, regular.
Like.
Fiber optic, yes, thank you.
Two buildings, residents, one resident.
We're on fiber optics.
Each of the residents a duplex,
Oh, that's nice.
It's
like the outage.
even though there's no connection.
All right, that's your image.
He's back.
long history.
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to my Zoom, but it decided to suddenly cut out on me. So to sum up, the provision in our code 1790-170 prohibits the ability of people to sell dwelling units as personal property. That does not and cannot prevent somebody from going through the condominium process if it's available to them and creating separate units of real property and selling those separate dwelling units as a separate unit in the condominium.
If they create a condominium to sell these units, does that mean they have a homeowners association?
I am not an expert on condominium law, but typically that does require my memory is that if there are common elements, a homeowners association is required. So typically the answer is when people do create condominiums, there are reasons for that. I would expect in this case, items such as the walkway would have to be common and would require a homeowners association.
Of course, if you look then, I mean, look at the permitted uses and condominium is not in it. And it's a defined term in the code, but condominium is not an outright permitted use.
Condominium in our R2 zone.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, did you hear Mike's comment?
I did hear that. And again, what I would say is they are not applying for a condominium. And state law authorizes it regardless of what city code doesn't or doesn't allow. People can do the condominium, can follow the condominium law, provided they meet the terms in the condominium.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Any other questions for Bill? Thanks, Bill. Don't go away though.
I'm listening.
Thank you. Okay, more complicated than I thought. Relative to that particular section, but I think we could navigate through it. Just take a little bit. But it might make sense to kind of approach this from a pieces perspective. Generally, I am with what you said, Mickey. I want to be very careful about us hanging up a development project on a walkway. This particular project has been before us many times in many ways. And I think while many people might not like what is being proposed, it is a reasonable proposal for that site, given what we all know it could be. So with that personal view, I'm willing to look at how to address some of the other things that we think are important and have been communicated to me as important in this community. in the larger scope of the approval of the walkway. That's my. Aaron, go ahead.
So what I'm finding troubling here is that at the last meeting in October, we asked them to, we basically said, come back to us with A, B, C, D, and E. They've done that. And now it sounds like we're already in the process of going there again. When will that end?
You know, I'm very aware of that. I remember walking away from that last meeting going, okay, there's a path to a clearer understanding. And the only thing for me that's different that I don't have as clear an understanding of is the business of how those lots are sold. Not lots, how those units are sold.
But we all agree that that's not in front of us today.
No, I don't agree that it's not in front of me today. I think that is a part of what's in front of us today.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm right. Definitely open to conversation there, but I think that's a part of the larger perspective that I'm considering when I look at whether to allow something that's not outright prescribed.
The rest of the development is as Mike was saying, is the reason for the reason for the path. And without a reason for the path, there's no approval of the path. So the reason for the path is, if not secondarily related, it's at least ancillarily related to the approval that we're looking at today.
Not sure I followed completely.
Well, the big picture is this just a conversation about that walkway, or is this a conversation about the walkway and the other things that are potentially something we could consider? Eric, stop me if I miss this. Eric is saying it is a part of it because without those other things, there's no need for the walkway. That's 30,000.
I would.
Okay. That resonate for you, Les?
Well, yeah, I thank you for that clarification. I kind of don't see that as being in front of us today. I can understand the rationale for wanting a walkway and why that's the only legal access to the upland portion of the east side of the property. We talked last time about we saw some preliminary footprints and we were unsure whether that really was what was going to be applied or not. We've seen more detail, but I'm not sure that we even know exactly what the final designs will look like. I don't think that's part of what we're being asked for tonight. I'm kind of with Aaron. I think that Red Crow has complied with what we requested last time. And we should deal with our concerns through conditions.
I agree with that. I guess more to find on my thoughts about it is pertinent, the development that's there. But as Mr. Lerma pointed out, it could be one building, it could be two buildings. We're still going to have the access for the access for construction issue before us, no matter what development ends up eventually getting approved and taking place on the upland portion of that, because it's either construction through the wetland or access off of Hemlock, regardless of what actual thing gets approved for construction on that upland portion. So that's related, but I don't think it's something that's to delve super deep into what the specifics of the development are, other than that there is a plan for a development, and that is the reason for the path.
And would your concern be addressed if there was a condition that said this could only be done if there's an approved development and building permit for the rest of the development? Would that address your concern about this chicken and egg question?
I would imagine so, yeah. That's the biggest, is that, and then the access are the two.
Yeah.
The two concerns I have, because they're gonna need the access for the walkway as well.
Yes,
Since
exactly.
to pour the concrete for the eastern side
Yes.
of that, you have to have construction access to that other side of the wetland.
Are you okay with the access for that purpose or those purposes?
I think so.
Okay.
It's so
I'm okay with it. I think
it's a better access than through the
I-
wetland. In my view of it, rather than, because there is no other access.
Yep.
Other than through a different private property.
If we limit it and are careful about how it's used, and then I'm okay with it.
I know that we're taking a look at the boardwalk, but just so the plan commission is aware, the applicant has submitted an application to the design review board for the drawings that you see before you this evening, and that would be reviewed by design review tomorrow. So just so you are aware, I know there's concerns about what could be built and different things like that, but there is an application with these footprints and designs to the board that would be reviewed by them at tomorrow night's meeting as just informational purposes.
Okay.
And then should you talk about conditions, I may have some
Okay.
thoughts or ideas too, as you consider those.
I'm definitely interested in your thoughts.
All right. Should I go with some of those while we're, there was a couple of comments and we may, depending on what direction this heads, but just a couple of thoughts, if something was to be considered approved. We could talk about the 120 square feet for the accessory dwelling. There could be a certain amount of time, potentially after occupancy or something to that effect, to eliminate the temporary access, whether that's 60 days, whether there's things that you would want there in terms of landscaping, boulders. I don't know whether or not like bollards bollards are effective, but I don't know if there's other better looking ways, that could be
The
done.
bollards is if there was a fire access issue
Sure,
that allows the fire to
sure.
come in.
And so that was out there.
See, bollards are city, sort of urban looking, and I wouldn't want them especially. But if the chief of the fire department said, well, for emergency purposes, we need to make.
Sounds, and it could be, okay, so it was just thoughts on that. And then, as far as homeowners association and things like that, there's, things where the applicant maybe provides documentation of the creation of that association. Just things to think about. Not saying yes or no, but just as you were talking conditions, those were just some of the things that jumped out.
Aaron, the reason that I brought up that homeowners association, and I realize that is well off the purview of what we mentioned in our last meeting, but so was the idea of not being able to sell these, is we had a development several years ago where they were not required to create a homeowners association. Nothing got done in the common areas. And everybody's looking at everybody else going, well, why didn't you catch that in so many words? So with that experience, I am thinking about that in terms of who is going to be responsible for this and not hoping someone else catches it. So maybe I am reaching a little bit, but it's not without having some past experience with no reach at all on it. So that's where that comes from. So I think that's a great idea. Steve, do you have others?
No, that's pertinent.
Let me simplify. I agree with all the conditions. I would change one. Mickey, you recommended conditional upon approval of a design or development package that meets the requirements of the code with respect to duplexes or dwelling or two-family dwellings.
Would you want it to actually be conditioned on this particular development permit that is currently under review?
Yeah.
So I mean, if it was that specific permit with
That permit, with conditions that bring it within the purview of the code as it relates to duplexes.
what does that mean to you? Does it mean?
That means that somehow, we can't say, don't ask, don't tell. We need to address the issue up front. I'm concerned that we go into a don't ask, don't tell when the package goes through. And again, somebody has to stand up and appeal. When we can help direct the discussion at the city level by putting in a provision that says, you know, you have to have a development package approved by the city, which complies with the requirements for a duplex under the code. This package with provisions that
I think
bring,
I'm not clear. Are you saying that the current structure does not comply or does comply?
unless there's a condition on that project that brings it within 1790, what was it, 178?
1790-70,
Yeah, 70.
the duplex standard, is that what you're referring?
So you're worried about the ownership.
Mhm.
So if it can't be sold separately, then you would feel it was in compliance.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. But would the homeowners association condition be comfortable to you? Does that feel like that brings?
It's not the same thing.
So that doesn't address your concern?
No.
What would?
That the property is held in common ownership.
So it would have to remain as a single owner of both units?
That's not a condo.
Well, if they want to come in with a condo package, which they haven't, they can come in with a condo package.
Oh, God, no.
Well, I'm not setting the rules here.
Quite frankly, I think I would rather see separate owners.
Yeah, that would open up a can of worms that we will never close.
So here's the thing. At least set it up. So you can put those conditions, I mean, they will have to come in for a variance and there will be horse trading.
I still feel like we are walking into territory where we are trying to control a permit that is not before us. I'm getting uncomfortable with this conversation. Personally, I feel as though we are acting as though it's up to us to consider what is before the city and the development permit, when what's before us is a footbridge.
Steve, what is going to be your approach to this package when we're done?
As we've discussed previously, we would consider it a duplex and we would follow it as a permitted use, that when they submitted development permits, we would act on it.
And would you condition the approval upon common ownership?
I would leave that to the attorney and I would take his advice as to what that is. And I would take the conditions that you apply to the bridge that we're discussing. But that would be a discussion that I've heard from Bill that is indicating that he doesn't believe we can do that.
I'm sorry, do what?
The common ownership discussion. It sounded like to me, and I would defer to him, that under the Oregon condo law, he was saying that it didn't appear that we could do that common ownership.
We can't do common ownership, but we could require a homeowners association to address maintenance of the footbridge and restrictions around the wetland.
That would be great.
And I think that would probably be the best way to address that and leave the rest of that to them. Does
Yeah. I would be comfortable with that.
that make sense?
Yeah, I would suggest you guys go ahead with your motion. I think you guys are in agreement.
Well, I can't say that, but any other comments from commissioners?
Clay, I've got a separate request, or at least question. There have been at least two parties that have already requested a continuation, with the record being kept open. How appropriate is that request tonight?
Well, I made very specific notes around that request. And I wrote extension if you think you need it to make a decision. That was Jam. So if there's another request for an extension, we should consider it.
Andy Morrow in his written testimony.
And Rosie Dorsey also requested.
It brings up the question of Bill, we've missed one meeting. So the question is, there have been a couple of requests for continuation. We are already, how many, we're well into this process.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The date is March 28th for the 128th.
Have until March 28th.
With appeals and everything like that, the whole process,
Yeah.
the city
So-
process.
This is the initial evidentiary hearing under state law. If somebody requests a continuance or to leave the record open, we've got to grant it. Don't have a choice. However, there are two different ways to do it. You can either do the 777, close the oral testimony, 777, and come back and make a decision, which we have done historically. The other alternative is to continue the matter to a date, time, and place certain at least 7 days from the date of the initial evidentiary hearing. And so, as I understand it, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, the Planning Commission has another hearing that is scheduled for next Thursday.
That's correct.
So what you could do is continue the matter to the hearing on, January 25th at 6 p.m. at the same place. Open the hearing, allow people to testify, close it, and then you would not need to grant any continuance or keeping the record open, even if somebody requested it, and make a decision that evening.
We do have the wetlands to consider that night, but
That's actually been continued.
I think what happened?
More delays.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
but we are doing the reorganization. The code audit reorganization, so that's a process that needs to happen as well.
Well, maybe we take this conversation as far as we need to tonight.
Yep.
We continue. People have a chance to submit additional information as they see fit, and then we can review it next week.
Mhm.
That sound good to people?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving along here.
Do we need to do a motion for that?
Well, I'm not sure we have enough. I mean, we're close, I
I
think.
think he said it's not a continuance, so as long as the meeting's 7 days later.
Great.
Bill, could you give us some feedback on that? I'm assuming we need a motion to continue.
A motion to continue to January 25th at 6 p.m. would be appropriate at this point.
Okay. I move that we continue to January 25th at 6 p.m.
I'll
Jen, will you call the roll? Or any discussion? Okay, Jen, will you call the roll?
Counselor Bates, or Commissioner, sorry,
No, that's fine. Yes.
Commissioner Farrow,
We're on continuing to next.
Okay, yeah.
There's
Just want to make sure.
a lot going on.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ostrander,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusik,
No.
Sarah Newton.
Yes.
No agenda.
And to continue to next Thursday is approved. Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Make a clarification on a comment that was made. The staff has done the calculation and the 120 days goes to March 28th. That's not how much time the planning commission has.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and doing it that week is very helpful.
Yeah, well, otherwise,
If it comes down to it,
Do we have an agenda for the 25th?
We need
things will be coming out probably tomorrow.
I think what would be helpful is if we advance this conversation as far as we can without making any kind of a motion. We can come back to it with any additional commentary, but not have to revisit it.
Yeah.
on a Already full. Yeah. So the last thing we were talking about was not putting a homeowners association requirement over the whole site, but specific pieces.
all common areas,
And common areas.
all common areas.
So we can do something like that. That doesn't say you have to make it a common or a condominium,
Right.
but it does protect those common elements.
Right.
All right. What about the conversation around access? Do we want to dive deeper into that?
Yeah, I think some of Steve's suggestions sounded good to me. I think I would actually be more in favor of saying before occupancy, construction access has to be removed. So whether that's with vegetation, but not after occupancy, but before.
What does occupancy mean in your world?
Basically, it's the last inspections by the building inspector our Public Works and Planning Department just to make sure that everything's been completed. I don't know if, and maybe this discussion now or for next time, I don't know if the applicant might have anything to say to that, because I'm not sure if there's still things that sometimes are happening, whether there's landscaping or different things sometimes that happen after occupancy that they still need to go onto the site. So I don't know. That was the reason why I was.
A term for when they're done with that part too, when it's, what do you call it when it's truly?
People are actually gonna move it.
Yeah, I mean.
Exactly.
It really comes down to that occupancy, but a lot of times there's still like, depending, like say, for example, you're finishing now, right? You still got to do the yard work. You still have to do certain things that you haven't been able to get to because of the time of year or what have you. So that's why I was, and I'm not saying, you know, again, I don't know if the applicant would have any other indicators. I'm not saying we should ask them for that, but maybe they could say some of those things. But I was thinking, at least if there was a date specific, it helps us out, because then it's like, hey, you need to have this done by this date. And so that's where I was going. Once we issue occupancy, for example, on any home, then at least I would have 30 or 60 days after that was issued. So I'm not saying that's right, but it was just the thought.
Feels right. If, you know, I'm not asking for comment now, Jamie, but if next week you could give us an idea of what would be reasonable, we will discuss that for sure.
And at the same time, I could maybe talk to the fire department and see if they would have any sort of ideas or thoughts on emergency access or things of that nature too.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think that was a good comment.
Yeah.
Concern. And then the 120-foot.
Yeah.
Limitation, I thought was good. Anything else people think we should be talking about in the scope of our review? Okay, then let's move on. We'll move to our next item, which is also actually breaks. Yeah, okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, we'll move ahead. Another quasi judicial hearing, public hearing CU 23-03. CEDA on behalf of the city of Cannon Beach for a conditional use permit. CU 2303. CEDA application for a conditional use permit for a municipal building in a commercial zone at 163 East Gower Street, tax lot 51038. 12,000 and 11,900. The property is a developed parcel with an existing municipal building that is zone C1 limited commercial. The request will be reviewed under the municipal code 17.80 conditional uses. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias? Has any commission member had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit? Hey, I think we've all.
Doing a site visit right now.
Who's trying to fool me? I didn't do it. I was. May we have the staff report?
Thank you. The applicant, CEDA, on behalf of the city of Cannon Beach, requests a conditional use review for the construction of a government structure in the limited commercial C1 zone. The proposed new structure will be a replacement of the existing city hall building, which the city is seeking to replace, as the current structure has been determined to have reached the end of its economical lifespan and is no longer considered suitable for continuing use by the city. The proposed replacement will be a 10,600 square foot single-story building that will be constructed to meet current building and design standards. After evaluating multiple potential sites, the city has determined the existing location to be the best available option for the siting of a replacement city hall due to availability of developable land with supporting infrastructure and ease of public accessibility. Moving into the applicable criteria, I'm in the limited commercial C1 zone found in chapter 1722. The staff comment is the proposed replacement city hall meets the definition, which is a government structure other than a park, and would function as a like-for-like replacement of the existing use on the property. In 1722-050 standards, In criteria A, lot size, the staff comment is that tax lot 11,900 has an area of 10,011 square feet. Tax lot 12,000 has an area of 22,970 square feet. Residential development would not be part of this project. With the lot dimensions, the staff comment is properties to the south and east of the property are zoned residential medium density R2. The required yards for these properties are 15 feet from the front and 5 feet from the sides. The site plan shows the new city halls having a 20-foot deep landscaping buffer to the south and an off-street parking area on the eastern portion of the property. The off-street parking area will have a vegetated buffer between the parking stalls and the eastern property boundary. Moving into the building height. The proposed building is low-lying in form and will not exceed 24 feet of vertical height above grade. Moving into signage. Signage is not proposed as a part of this application. Signage for the City Hall replacement project will be evaluated during the development review process. And where applicable, will go before the design review board. Moving into parking. The staff comment is the proposed site plan shows 26 off-street parking spaces, an increase over the current amount of off-street parking available currently. Provisions regarding downtown parking requirements are not applicable to this application. Moving into the design review requirements. As this would be a non-residential project, the plans will be reviewed by the design review board at the time of application for structural development. Moving into geological and soils engineering studies. Exhibit A2 is a geotechnical report prepared by Geotech Solutions Incorporated, July 2023, which states that the redevelopment of the property for the intended use is feasible so long as specific recommendations detailed in that report are followed during design and construction. These recommendations address earthwork, seismic issues, foundation piling, hardscaping, and stormwater management. Moving to outdoor merchandising, that is not applicable to this application. Regarding a minimum landscaping borders, staff comment is that the proposed site plan shows a 3-foot landscaping buffer between the northern wall of the proposed building and the sidewalk along East Gower Street. When more developed plans are submitted for design review, adherence to this standard will receive additional review. Moving into floor area ratio. This criterion does not apply to the application as the subject property is not in the downtown area. However, the proposed structure measures 10,609 square feet, and the floor area ratio between the combined lots would be a 0.46. Vehicular access. Again, this criteria does not apply to the application as it is not in the downtown area. Moving into conditional use standards in chapter 1780. Item A, demand exists for the use of the proposed location. Staff comment is that the current city hall building has been determined to be at the end of its economically useful lifespan. An evaluation report prepared by SRG, Exhibit C2, states that the building was constructed around 1948 in order to support operations in the local timber industry. It has since been adapted for use as a city hall and maintained for that purpose since approximately 1969. The report describes various challenges with the existing structure and references a March 2018 report prepared by Tollivon Architect, which states, quote, "The building is simply not able to be remodeled in an economic manner as compared to constructing a new facility," close quote. Moving into criterion B, which addresses traffic and congestion. Staff comment is that it is not anticipated that construction of a replacement city hall will result in significant changes to traffic, congestion, water use, etc. Site improvements such as off-street parking would be arranged in such a way as to increase the overall amount of parking available and bring the facility into compliance with off-street parking requirements. Moving to item C, regarding adequate amount of space for yards, buildings, drives, etc. The staff comment is that the project will provide for adequate buffering between the subject property and the adjacent residentially zoned properties to the east and south. Along the northern edge of the structure, a 3-foot landscape buffer will be maintained excuse me, between it and the sidewalk. The site plan shows 3 off-street ADA accessible parking spaces, with one of those adjacent to the front area of the building. Refuse collection will be moved to an enclosure at the southeast corner of the parking area. Moving into item D, topography, soils, and physical characteristics. Exhibit A2 is a geotechnical report prepared by Geotech Solutions Incorporated in July 2023, which states the redevelopment of the property for the intended use is feasible. As stated before, it includes recommendations regarding earthwork, seismic issues, piling, and etc. Moving into item E, adequate site layout for transportation activities. The proposed site plan shows that the sidewalks will be repositioned in order to create a buffer between pedestrians and automobile traffic. As stated above, 1 off-street ADA accessible parking space will be provided in close proximity to the public entrance of the building, with an additional 2 in the main parking lot. The redevelopment of the property will not affect existing pedestrian walkway along the eastern perimeter. That refers to the pedestrian trail between this and the apartments to the east. And criteria F, the site and building design ensure that the use will be compatible with surrounding area. And the comment is that application materials state that the proposed building and site are designed to provide a welcoming orientation and increased public gathering space for the community, and that the proposed city hall is designed to reflect the values and priorities of the community. During pre-development review of the project, the design review board will evaluate the proposal against the criteria established in Municipal Code 1744 design review in order to maintain the community character. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. I take it the only correspondence we've received additional would have been in this packet. Call for public testimony. Pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The Planning Commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Leslie Jones. I'm here as the applicant. I'm an associate architect with CEDA Architects and Engineers, and I will be doing the applicant presentation. So to start, I want to apologize that I'm not there in person. I had intended to be there in person tonight and got stuck with inclement weather. So I will do my best here over Zoom. Steve already talked some about the building history, but just to recap my understanding, the building was constructed in 1948 for a different use than it's being used now as a building supply store and storage facility. It transitions to City Hall in 1969 and has been used as such ever since. There was a evaluation of the building done back in 2018 that determined that the building is at the end of its useful life, as Steve mentioned. So when CEDA was brought on to the project, our first steps were to do a series of community outreach events when we talked to the community to get input and priorities for the design, construction, and location of this new building. One of the things that we heard loud and clear when we did that community outreach was a concern for safety. That was particularly in response to the threat of a tsunami. So we did quite a bit of brainstorming on ways that we could mitigate that risk. what we determined in that was to relocate the police station, which is currently in the city hall, co-located. We determined to relocate that out of the tsunami inundation zone. But as we were reviewing the many options, what we also heard from the community is a real preference to keep the city hall in a centrally located place so that it could be a hub for activity, so that it was safe and convenient for pedestrian access. And so that community response drove our decision to propose that the city hall be located where we are currently, where you are currently sitting, and where our conditional use is requesting that it be located. To go briefly over the criteria, I will be brief because I don't want to repeat what Steve has already said. So the first item is demand for the use at the proposed location. As I mentioned, there was community input that the current location is well known and it's safe for pedestrians, which was of utmost importance. We reviewed alternate locations in the C2 zone. That's a zone that allows government buildings outright. What we found were that those sites were located on the east side of Highway 101, which presents challenges in terms of community access. Similarly, as you'll hear in the hearing for the police zone change, that site is also located east of Highway 101 and was another place we considered locating the city hall. Criteria 2 or B, but not increased traffic congestion. I think because this is the existing city hall, we won't increase. In fact, I believe the proposal will decrease congestion and impact to infrastructure as we will be relocating the police function to a different site. Criteria C is to demonstrate that the site has adequate space for yards and drives and parking and layout. We do have, as Steve mentioned, the buffers. Both to the south, there's a 20-foot landscape buffer between our use and those residential uses on the south side. We additionally have that 3-foot landscape buffer on the north side between the sidewalk along Gower and the proposed building. Item E is the site layout for transportation and flow. Steve did mention the parking is on the east side of the building. That will be primarily staff parking. On the west side of the building, we are proposing more pedestrian access, welcoming pedestrian entry, community amenity plaza area on the west side, and 2 parking spaces that we're proposing in the right-of-way. One of those parking spaces would be an accessible space near the building entry. And the second parking space you'll see on the site plan there, we envision that as a time-restricted space. So a space that could be used for drop-off and quick visits to the city hall. And finally, F is explain how the proposed site and building will be compatible with the surrounding area. I started by mentioning the community outreach events we held at the beginning. Another element of that was to really listen to the community about design aesthetics and what would make this building a feature because it is central and will be an anchor for the Midtown area. So what does that mean for the community and for residents, and how can we enhance the village character of Cannon Beach? And so as we move through design, we've been trying to focus on those elements that will serve the purpose of fitting in with the surrounding area and really becoming an exemplar of the community. And with that, I'll conclude and am happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions for Leslie?
Yeah, did you guys model the traffic during construction? Was there any concern about additional traffic during highest season going from construction vehicles? And how do you propose to handle that?
So our construction team, the contractor involved here is Emmerich Construction, and they have been working with the city on a couple fronts. One, to think about the staging of construction vehicles and how that would work to limit the impacts on street access and traffic, especially during the high season. And also to work with the city on relocating city functions during that construction period. So there's several options right now on the table for that specifically. Once the building is demoed, there will be more space on the site to work with. We've talked also about potentially using some of the lower parking area towards Hemlock as a temporary staging ground.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Leslie. Are there other presentations by the applicant? Okay, I'm taking this to just Leslie tonight. Are there presentations by proponents? Are you a proponent? Okay.
You.
And Siebert Warman, P.O. Box 778. I just wanted to say a couple things, and that is that I was very grateful that this site was chosen for the new building. I think it's the heart of our community to keep it here. So that's a main concern for me. And also, I wanted to say that the size of the building, I'm very relieved that the building, I think, as it is now, is about 10,000 square feet. And this new building would only be about 600 square feet larger, which is not much. And so I'm in favor of this. For the most part, it's not perfect, but nothing is. So I'm really going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Would other proponents like to come forward? Is there anyone online? Okay, how about opponents? Okay. I would offer the applicant an opportunity to respond again, unless there's something you forgot, or I don't think there's anything to respond to here.
I think the only clarification that I would make is that our current design sits even slightly smaller. So our current square footage is a total of 10,465 square feet, which includes 600 square feet of unconditioned storage or garage space and office space that is currently totaling 9,865 square feet.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. There's nothing further from the applicant. We will close the public hearing and move to our discussion.
So shocking as it might sound, I'm confused. Because I'm looking at exhibit C2. And both the options for Gower Street show the police station being part of City Hall, but in the presentation, Ms. Jones said that it would be separate. So which one is it?
You know what? I'm going to amend the closed record and call that a question for Ms. Jones. Okay. I'm opening back up for a question for you, Leslie. Did you hear the question?
I did hear the question. I was trying to flip through to see which is exhibit C2, I believe you said. So I don't have that exhibit in front of me to respond to, but I can say definitively that the police station will not be located at the proposed City Hall.
Correct. Exhibit C2 was developed in December of 2018. It was included as reference material because it provided background information on this specific building.
So we don't have any visuals of like this for what is currently proposed for the city versus the police station?
I do not believe the city plans, well, let's look at exhibit A1.
A1 shows site plan and elevations.
Yeah, I don't believe we have as developed plans for this site as we do for the police station at this point in time.
There are, you see the renderings?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is really hard to maneuver through these big packets, just an FYI.
Yeah.
So no, I don't see it.
Okay.
Right here. It's actually a pretty building.
But I want to see the layout of,
There is, no, I thought there was one in there.
You mean like the floor plan where?
yeah,
the office
like
is?
they, like in C2.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, there's just one in this packet. I have seen one. It's not part of our packet though, I think. Of the interior plan for this.
Where's the one for the police station?
There is one, but it's part of the zoning in the next agenda item. It's like, okay, let's see. I wrote down what page it's on. It's page 503 of our packet. Has the interior schematics of the police station. Not that that's part of this. But for the next item, it has the interior.
Bruce, did you want to add some color to the conversation?
What was that?
I don't know color, but come on.
Okay, black and white.
Maybe clarification. Leslie, can you pull up the floor plans?
I can pull up the floor plans.
Where is
Yes.
this supposed to be on
I
Westwood?
think that's what you were all at.
Yes.
For commission, I don't know if it helps that each agenda item is tagged. So there's a section that you can pull up on your PDF and you can go from agenda item to agenda item.
Wow.
So,
You can?
yeah.
Can we take that up in good order? Because I know you're handing out programs that help you navigate these things.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm,
Well, I did that. I don't know what has been happening previously, but when Tess and I were doing the packet, we put it together with the tabs. So that way it makes it a little.
That's
easier
great.
to go from
Yeah.
item to item.
okay.
I am pulling up and opening the floor plans now.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a cursor you could maybe orient us or?
I do. So can you see my cursor moving?
Yes.
Okay, so to orient you, Gower Street is along the north. Our primary building entry is located here adjacent to the proposed council chambers. As you enter the building, you enter a public lobby with access to a small conference room. This is envisioned for the public and any staff to meet informally to review plans or anything else that is a community concern. Adjacent to the public lobby is an area for amenities, so primarily toilet rooms, multi-fixture, single use, and an area of limited service and announcements. Also adjacent to the council chamber is a storage area for chairs and tables. The area you see to the left of the dashed red line, that's the public area. So that area would be unrestricted public access during business hours. From that area, there is a service counter into finance. So this area in orange here, this is the finance department. There is a central building core here or thoroughfare that is for staff. So from this door back is the staff area. This area of in brown or tan are the areas of common staff use and amenities. They include storage areas, another slightly larger conference room, copy print area, break room, a wellness room. So that's also sometimes called a mother's room, and another toilet room with a shower in it. The purple area here on the south side of the building is the executive and IT area. So there are a total of 4 private offices there, a server room, the IT storage, and an open office area that would be dedicated. One of those, I believe, is for farmers market with a couple of workstations for growth. Emergency management is also located in that executive IT suite. On the other side of the common corridor is the community development and public works area. That includes a number of private offices, but also a common area for collaboration between those 2 departments because there's quite a bit of overlap. Adjacent to the public works workstation and mailboxes, there is a mudroom. I will say on this that you're looking at, this mudroom is depicted in yellow, but it's actually for multiple use by multiple departments. So it has direct access to public works. If public works employees are coming in, there's a number who come in who don't have dedicated workstations here in the building, but check in from the field daily. And so having a space for them to come in that is not direct access, but allows to drop off muddy boots or whatever the case might be. That's this mudroom here. We have lockers above that and additional storage. This wing here at the east side, this is HRAP. It has an area of open office, 1 private office, a collaborative area for people to come in and meet before they head out to the beach, and also a wet lab here for them to process specimens. I mentioned the 600 square foot semi-conditioned garage area that's depicted here. There's an overhead garage door that leads out to the parking, as well as a separate single door with access then into the rest of the building.
A couple of things. This chamber is about 1,200 square feet. That council chamber is 1,500 square feet. The difference is that this can seat 44, and that configuration can seat about
80.
About 80.
That's good.
Yeah, and part of that was the design of the dais. So we have lessened the arc so that we can fill more of that central area with seating and get commissioners or counselors or whoever is up there closer proximity to the audience.
Any other questions for Leslie while we have her?
Thank you for opening it back.
Yeah. Thank you again, Leslie.
Thank you.
With that, we will close the public comment officially again.
Officially.
Reclose. Okay. Would like to lead us off.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I just have one question, and I'd like it addressed at some point. I don't know if it has to be today. I really would like to see a plan for construction, right? I mean, if that happens in the middle of the summer and, we will have Hemlock with construction at Forest Lawn and down there at Gower, and I would like to understand just exactly how we make our experience here, except with the construction acceptable for the tourists and the locals. Other than that, impressive work.
I had a comment that's probably has nothing to do with purview of this particular application, just about the parking that, I think Liz mentioned that the parking is staff, essentially staff parking only. And at this time, we have staff parking behind and we have 5 spots out front. And so it's changing the number of publicly accessible spots from 5 with 1 handicap to 1 with a handicap. For people that are driving from the north end of town to come, like if you have to drive to get to here, like it's great we have access for pedestrian, but is the operationally or are the other parking spots in the back, is that going to be something that's available for public parking or meetings and stuff?
Of course, there's also the parking right here.
Yeah,
And
well-
across the street, so it doesn't.
Well, the parking across the streets, like it's summer is always full. So I was just,
Fine for the evening meetings, even in the
Yeah.
summer.
yeah,
That's
the
not a
evening
problem.
meetings are fine. Yeah, I was just thinking for like the public works meeting that's in the afternoon and the other meetings. Not that that's within this application in any way.
So I do have one comment to make on that. At this point in time, a number of staff members do park their personal vehicles on the northern side here. And that would free up, or is intended to free up, a significant number of those spaces if employees aren't parking there, but instead are parking in the off-street parking. That would open up to a dozen spaces.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking if it's restricted only, not that, again, it's not our application before us, but if that's gonna be an issue, like for people that are coming from the other end of town to want to attend a meeting and there's no parking, but there is parking in the staff lot, is that restricted only to staff?
I don't know that we've talked about that much, but in the evening, I can't imagine why we wouldn't allow for others to use it.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn there, but I would anticipate that for evening meetings, if they're available, that the people should be free to use them.
Eric, you bring up a good point. I hadn't thought about doing this yet. There's 2 spaces right across the street here that are limited for city hall business.
Yeah.
We could use some of those either on site or on the street for a half-hour time or something. That's a good point.
I think it's very impressive. I just want to, and maybe I'm being premature with this, but to kind of add on to what Mike said, I would be also really concerned about where the temporary police are going to be, because they need unrestricted access to get in and out. So where are they being moved during this construction?
Bruce, you want to just take a chair up here?
I think one of these is my chair.
No, this one.
You go.
You got it done.
Using.
We're looking at a number of options for locating staff and the police department. One is the fire station on the south end. Does not get a lot of use. We're looking possibly to have that as a place that they would operate out of. Putting modulars down here in this parking lot here. It would eventually be moved to be the the food pantry. Also over close to the recycling center, there's a cinder parking lot over that way. We're looking possibly to put the modulars in that location. And then staff, there's Public Works potentially could move a couple of people up to the yard. Planning, I don't know if we're gonna try to make them last in that little building again. We think it has to be inside of a building to work. We're looking at a number of options for those kinds of things.
But specifically police.
Specifically, most likely the police will be reporting at the station down south in
Arch Cape Fire Station.
Arch Cape, yes, the Arch Cape, thank you. Arch Cape, and then but would be in town most of the time. And then we would have a police person, one of the admins in whatever buildings we have down here so that a person can go if they want to talk about a ticket or whatever. They would have a police contact to be able to talk to.
How is that going to impact police response time if they're all the way in Arch Cape?
I would ask Jason, but most of the time they're in the city.
Okay.
They're working on their vehicles, so all their laptops and information that they have is in the vehicle with them.
So you don't see any potential negative to response time? Great, thank you.
Other questions?
I thought I heard somewhere in here that there's a conditional use period, a second conditional use period in here. Something about we're gonna go over with two ADLs into the, parking spaces over into the,
There was one parking. space in
Setback.
Gower.
yeah.
Oh, and
Into the setback, didn't you mention? I thought somebody mentioned that. I would encourage you, if there is somebody that just get it in here so we can take care of it now.
As far as the, I know in the sidewalk and everything is shown in here as far as the parking space with the handicap. Are you talking about the one in the front that provides, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't.
I don't know.
I think it was that short-term parking.
Yeah, yes.
The handicap and the short-term parking.
Right, so we have that in here and we're asked, that's part of the
Part of it, oh.
request.
Okay. There are two handicap spaces in the back. Okay.
Okay. Other questions? That's Aaron, I can't see you guys as well. You've been moved to just 10-point font.
Well, thanks for thinking of us.
Can't forget you, Aaron. Are people feeling pretty good here about this?
Yeah, I think we could move.
Can we get a motion then? Don't be bashful.
I would like to offer a motion, but I will condition it upon an acceptable parking plan during construction, right? I mean, that it's at least considered. I'm sure it will be, but I mean, it sounds to me like we're gonna lose this parking out here
Well, I feel like.
and on this side and then over here in downtown, and all of a sudden, people coming into town during construction are gonna have nowhere to park except on residential streets. So,
It's gonna be challenging.
yeah, it is. So at least give us some idea of how you're gonna deal with all that. It is going to be quite challenging. I mean, we're losing space and we're taking space. But from the schedule that we're trying to maintain, and part of the reason we're here tonight is to have the construction start in September. And so construction, the primary construction, they're really messy with the big vehicles and things. It happened through the winter. Okay. And then hopefully we'll have enough of the building dried in that they can continue working after that point with, less disruption. Okay, so here's my motion. I move that we approve the conditional use to put institutional, a government facility in a commercial zone, and also to approve the setback request, handicap market.
I don't think we have do we have an institutional zone here? That's the next.
It's a commercial zone.
That's
Yeah.
commercial one.
Commercial, in the commercial zone. I corrected halfway.
Okay, good. I have a second.
I second that.
Any additional comments, conversation? We good? Okay. Jen, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ostrander,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusek. Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris. Yes. Chair Newton.
Yes. Conditional use is approved.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the good job, everyone. Let's take a 2-minute break. Our next item is also a quasi judicial hearing, public hearing ZO 2303, on behalf of the city of Cannon Beach for proposed comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. ZO 2303, Cedar proposed comprehensive plan amendment and zone change for plot 41006B00200 and undeveloped property located at 1389 North Highway 101. The property is currently zoned IR, Institutional Reserve, and the request is to change the zoning classification to IN, Institutional. The request will be reviewed under the Municipal Code, Section 86 Amendment, provisions established. You have the staff report.
Thank you. CETA, on behalf of the city of Cannon Beach, is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change for the subject property adjacent to the intersection of US Highway 101 and Tolovana Main Line Road. The parcel was acquired by the city as part of the larger Southwind site in 2013, and its zoning classification is institutional reserve. Adjacent properties on the east side of Highway 101 include 2 other city-owned tax lots that comprise the Southwind site and 1 approximately half-acre tax lot owned by LNC Tree Farms Incorporated. The city-owned properties are within city limits and are undeveloped with the exception of an emergency services cache site located on the subject property. After acquiring the property, the Southwind Master Plan was finalized in December 2014. This plan detailed current conditions and outlined potential developments as well as roads and utility access. This plan states the city intends to use the site for critical and essential facilities and services because the property is largely above the reach of the largest predicted tsunami. Potential uses detailed in the plan include a police station, fire station, emergency operations center, daycare facilities, a medical clinic, food bank, and any replacement of the former Cannon Beach Elementary School. The plan shows these uses being clustered on a portion of tax lot 41006B000100 that was cleared through timber harvest in 2013. The purpose of this application is to change the zoning classification of the subject property from institutional reserve to institutional for the purpose of constructing a new police station and emergency operations center on that site. The current zoning classification allows for a range of forestry operations and miscellaneous activities as permitted or conditional uses, but it does not allow for any significant level of development. The proposed zoning classification allows for community buildings as a use permitted outright. A police station is considered a community building and would be a permitted use in this zone. As this application is for a single property that will not affect a broad area or number of property owners, it is considered a quasi-judicial amendment action as defined by the municipal code. Moving into the applicable criteria found in Municipal Code 1786070B, amendments criteria. Moving into item number 1, the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The staff comment is that the subject property's land use planning framework is detailed in the Southwind Master Plan, which was developed in response to the unique nature of the site and its intended purposes at the time of acquisition and annexation into the city. This plan mandates that the property be used by the city for municipal or other community buildings that serve a public purpose, a requirement which the intended development is consistent with. The Tolovana Park policies of the comprehensive plan mandate that the Tolovana Park neighborhood remain primarily residential in nature. This neighborhood is separated from the subject property by Highway 101, which provides a barrier between it and the subject property. The proposed police station has no apparent inconsistencies with the primarily residential nature of the neighborhood, and no significant level of additional development is planned or anticipated in conjunction with the new police station project. Due to current and anticipated future levels of tourism, there is significant pressures placed on the city's police department. The new station will increase the ability of the department to provide more efficient and effective services to residents and visitors. Moving into criterion 2, regarding the amendment satisfying land and water use needs, meeting transportation demands, and providing community facilities and services. The comment is that the amendment allows for the provision of community facilities and services through the construction of a new police station and retention of and possible future improvements to the existing cache site managed by the city's emergency services program. The city has long considered the property for development of new essential facilities above the tsunami inundation line. The city's goal for the police station is to develop a structure that will facilitate the department's ability to provide day-to-day services while being constructed to remain operational following a seismic or tsunami event. The proposed emergency operations center will be designed to function as an epicenter during all phases of resiliency efforts. The requested zone change will allow the development of the police station and emergency operations center to be constructed out of the tsunami inundation zone. During the site selection process, the city evaluated the current Gower Street location and determined it to be unsuitable for the placement of emergency infrastructure as it does not comply with new statutory requirements regarding identified tsunami inundation potential. There is an adequate level of sewer and water capacity available to accommodate the projected development of the area, and such capacity can be made available in a timely manner. Some infrastructure improvements, such as roads and electrical services, currently exist at the site and can be easily upgraded. Other infrastructure, such as water, sewer, and stormwater services, can readily be extended to the site. Moving into criterion 3, regarding land suitability. The staff comment is that Oregon House Bill 2605, which became effective on January 1st, 2022, requires newly constructed structures that are designated as essential facilities, which include police stations, emergency vehicle garages, and designated emergency preparedness and operation facilities required for emergency response to be located outside of delineated tsunami inundation zones. And due to the nature of the topography in the Cannon Beach area, there are limited opportunities for such development that avoid tsunami inundation areas, the subject property being one of them. Figure 2 included with this report shows the subject property in relation to a statewide XXL inundation scenario modeled by the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. Moving into criterion 4 regarding resource lands. The comment is that the subject property generally and the site proposed for the new police station specifically do not have any identified wetlands or stream corridors present on them, and there are no trees that would need to be removed in order to accommodate the planned development. The Southwind Master Plan does call for development to be placed on an area on Tax Lot 100 that was cleared through harvest approximately 10 years ago. However, placement in this location would require the development of new infrastructure, access roads, vegetative clearing, and likely the placement of fill or other terrain altering activities prior to the start of work. Additionally, placement of the new police station on the subject property increases its visibility and accessibility compared to the location on the master plan. Moving into criterion 5 regarding the compatibility with land use development pattern and subject or in the surrounding area. The proposed police station has no apparent inconsistencies with the primarily residential nature of the Tolovana Park neighborhood on the opposite side of Highway 101, and no significant level of additional development is planned or anticipated in conjunction with the new police station project. The general types of development conceived by the Southwind Master Plan are relatively low intensity and unlikely to have any significant impact on adjacent property users. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take it. We don't have additional correspondence, so we'll move straight to public testimony. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan, municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, evidence regarding the application. The Planning Commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes.
Hello again.
I will be presenting for this one as well as the applicant. Again, my name is Leslie Jones with CETA Architects and Engineers. So as was mentioned, our primary impetus for proposing the police station where we are is to move it outside of the tsunami inundation zone. That was something we heard as important to the community, to have those emergency services located on higher ground. And so to clarify, the previous master plan looked at the larger Southwind site and ran into several obstacles, as I understand it, in terms of that development. So this proposal for the zone change and for the police station is specific to that smaller tax lot that we call the cache site, and is not the overall, that larger property that is often referred to as the Southwind site is not impacted here. The police station would be a smaller building located on that smaller site, which helps us mitigate a lot of those obstacles that were previously encountered with the larger development. So there is existing access from the highway there. We have been working with ODOT to confirm that access can be maintained and to confirm the limits of the development that would be triggered by ODOT to make a safe intersection there. In terms of the comprehensive plan, I believe we are in the spirit of that plan and fully advocate for the police station at this proposed location for quick access to the community based on proximity to Highway 101 and services. So it was mentioned there are adequate services here, I believe, on site, and those some services could be extended over. We've also been working with emergency development in terms of the existing use as the cache site and with Public Works to make sure that both of those departments have access both further up the hill and for use to the cache equipment on site. So there is one of those structures that is currently used for emergency management that, as we have been moving through design, we're proposing we will rebuild it just because of the grading that will be required to develop the police station. But otherwise, those cache resources will remain on site, and the site plan we've developed accommodates them. And I think with that, I will conclude on this item.
Does ODOT have any requirements about emergency vehicles entering their roadways, like flashing lights to tell oncoming or traffic coming either way to stop? Or have you gotten down to that level of detail of conversation with them?
I have not heard that is a requirement from them. I know we've talked about incoming and outgoing lanes and signage around there, but I haven't heard specifics about requirements specific to the highway regarding emergency vehicles.
I wonder if going the other way, if it's something that they would allow. If there's a further protection for emergency vehicles coming out of that location, just, in addition to the lights and sirens on the vehicle, having a buffer on either side of the station with some sort of warning signal, or I don't know if you could put a stop signal on a highway, but some sort of warning signal, emergency vehicles entering highway.
Mm-hmm.
Just an idea. Anything else for Leslie? Anybody else? Thank you again, Leslie.
Thank you.
Questions?
No.
Everybody feeling good?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We haven't asked for opponents yet.
Man, you get me after 8 o'clock at night. I am looking at the door. Gosh. Are there, in addition to the applicant, proponents? Jan, please come forward.
Sorry, I can't see.
No, no.
I just wanted to say, I do support this as well. I wanted to let you know it's because of the location that we really do need the EOC out of the tsunami zone. I think a lot of people wanted that. And then the size, I was hoping it would be a little smaller, but because of the EOC being included, I'm okay with the size, I guess. And then the other thing was we did have assurances, I think, from Leslie and her team that the forest corridor along this area would be enhanced along that Highway 101, which is a really important thing. So hopefully that'll happen, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents like to come forward? How about opponents? Okay, would the applicant like to say anything in conclusion?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will close public. Thank you, Dorian, for that. Now.
So I have a concern, not about the project going forward as a whole, but this specific request for this zoning, this change to the zone, what the underlying zoning would mean for it. It's defined in the application that the police station is a community building, when I would understand it to be a government building, not a community building. And that it's not a building that's for educational, cultural, or community use. It's a police station that has relatively limited public access and community access to it, because by the nature of it being a police station, there's spaces like that. And a government building is outright use in C2. And it's not listed in institutional as outright or conditional that. And so that's, I had a concern kind of along the same lines as the Moon application from months back, that the wrong zone was being looked at to accomplish a task, that the task made sense, but the zoning request didn't make perfect sense.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I can see, some of those discussion points. We felt comfortable with the community building incorporating a police station. So I guess there's some things that you can take a look at, but we felt that was an appropriate zone and that a community building would fall on, that the police station would fall under that category.
Yeah, the text says community buildings and areas which provide for educational or cultural activities. One thing to note is that the ordinance doesn't very clearly define government buildings. It's just kind of a non-thing where it's nebulous at best as far as the use category, because it's such a small proportion of use in the area. But government buildings aren't commercial either, which is why we just had the conditional use application for a government building in a commercial zone.
Well, my understanding was because it was conditional use, because it wasn't C2, that this is C1. If it was C2, then it would have been outright and would have come.
Right, but the only C2 we have is that bit over by the over in the
Well, and that's because it's from my reading of it, like, is if the choice was community building or government building, police station to me would make sense to refer to it as a government building, not a community building.
But it does provide a community service, and I believe that was our rationale behind.
Well, all government buildings provide community service. It's the point of a government building, to support the community.
You could also, though, say that a government building is where, rulemaking occurs, as opposed to supporting the community as emergency safety. So I think that there's arguments that could go either way.
All right, this is my only concern that I had with it. It wasn't that the project stuff to slow it down or weird it up or anything. I just thought it was interesting, and if it would set any kind of, not that it would set a precedent, because this is not a precedent setting decision, but keep us in line with decisions we've made in the past about the intended use of the thing of the property versus.
To be honest, I feel more comfortable calling this institutional than commercial because I know that there's been a lot of community concern about commercial
Mhm.
on the other side of the highway. If we, as the city, say the city has commercial property, I could see surrounding landowners saying, well, this is now a commercial area.
Yeah,
Why can't we be commercial too? So I actually would be far more comfortable calling it for that, or institutional for that reason,
But isn't that what's before us, is change it from IR to IN?
which is
I-
institutional, not commercial.
Right, but that's what's before us.
What I'm saying is I would not want this to be commercial
Right.
because surrounding,
No, I understand.
so I was answering
Taking
the
it out of-
concern about.
A comprehensive plan,
Huh.
which is kind of an overlay of where we want to go. And one is saying, put it into the city's plan now, into the zoning code. So it's big picture down to the detail.
Okay.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, and so with the institutional reserve, it was kind of like almost like a holding zone.
Right.
And it really limited the types of uses. And that's why we kind of went that route, because the way the South Winds plan talked about it previously, that these types of institutional uses, government, police, city hall, school, and it kind of limited where the commercial could open it up. So that was part of the reason why we went to the institution. So the changing it from the reserve to the institutional allows for development to now occur.
But it's not commercial.
Correct.
Okay.
And it takes that central or the commercial zoning takes that opportunity away that can't take place there.
Great.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it too, to your point about.
And that's my
potential
point,
commercial.
that I don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
open
okay.
up the door
That's a great point.
to expansive
That
commercial.
really resonates. Okay. Any other? People feeling good about?
Feeling
what we've
good.
heard? Okay. Better want to make a motion?
Say, Clay, one quick question,
Sure, go ahead, Les.
or maybe this is for Steve. This is a zoning decision, so we're just making a recommendation to the council. Is
Mhm.
that right?
It ultimately, the council has to make that change, but yeah, we're making the recommendation. So yeah, I think that is a
Okay.
fair summary.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that, and that's a excellent point, Les. So anytime we're doing zoning amendments and things like that, the plan commission has the hearing and makes a recommendation to council, and council will be the decision body with regards to the official action.
Anyone want to make a motion for a recommendation?
Sure, I'll move to recommend the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and zone change to the city council.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Jen, will you call the roll?
Okay, Commissioner Faro,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ostrander,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusik. Is that a yes?
Oh, yes.
Okay, Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Chair Newton.
Yes. Recommendation is approved. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your work there. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Will you show up next week? We have a little more contentious meeting, I hear. Kidding. All right, so let's move over to, let's say, tree report.
For the month of November, and we will detail December in next week's meeting, but we only had one application. It was the permit for rights for camping. A total of 15 hazard trees were removed. And due to the volume of trees, there was no replanting required at that property. And generally speaking, I do not believe there was a lot in December as far as permit applications either.
We've got a nature's pruning going on now.
Oh.
I expect an uptick.
That,
I expect an uptick in the near future.
Yeah, I bet there will be. Okay, with that, we'll move to good of the order. Does anyone have anything they'd like to?
Yeah, just one thing. I was sitting in that last meeting, Jen, and sitting next to one of the counselors, and he showed me how you have a program that takes these packages and gives you the tabs down at the bottom by exhibit numbers. Do you know what it was? Was, the gentleman sits around.
Oh, Brandon?
Brandon, yeah.
Brandon.
So on the packet, if you can pull up the packet for tonight, there's tabs. So what I do with council is I tab each item, and I don't know how it looks on their iPads because every device is slightly different. So when he pulls up the packet, we can show you. So like on mine, there's the is it the 3 lines over?
On the top left.
Yes, if you click that, you can click to the different sections
Oh.
of the packet.
Oh, that's great.
So it's something I've always done with council, and so when we did this packet, that's what I went over with Tessa, because it's easier to go back and forth and to navigate. It doesn't go to each exhibit and every item, but at least gives you the agenda item, so you can go through.
So Jen, that's great. Can we maybe wish list, drill it down to each exhibit?
I think in the future, that's something we can look at. Right now, we're kind of we don't really have Tessa full time. She's doing court clerk and front office and planning.
Just for the wish list.
It's something we can definitely look at, because I know once you have those agenda items, you can do like subcategories.
Right.
And it definitely makes maneuvering easier.
That only works.
It's your own bookmark.
Huh?
You couldn't bookmark.
But just an example, I was sitting with a counselor who wanted to look at the letter this commission had sent to council, and it was embedded in this really, really, really big package. And we spent a good 15 minutes trying to get to it. And if there had been a tab, like, you know, I understand it's more work on the get-go, but then it's much easier to just get to these places, even during the meetings. I know I spend a lot of time scrolling up and down looking for things, just would make
I
it
just,
more efficient.
when I'm reviewing it electronically, I'll make my own
Oh.
bookmarks so that, and it actually helps me remember the place a little bit. So add a bookmark here. This was an important page, and I can find it myself.
That's a good point too, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think it brings up a great conversation. You know, earlier we were talking, Jen, Tessa and I, about procedure process.
Yeah.
And we figured out one little gap in my process is, you know, I often will leave Portland and come here I'll leave Portland about 3. So if someone sends in correspondence, I will often miss it
Yeah.
until I'm sitting right here and then I'm jammed and I don't have a great chance to go through it. So one of the things that we've done in the past, and we did tonight, was actually print, because I'm not as technically savvy as you. And so that way I can actually look at this stuff. And maybe I'll get more up to speed if I have tabs like we're talking about in the big picture. But now is a great time to think about, you know, here we are in New Year, so why not put some resolutions out? Some ways that we think we could operate more efficiently in the future. And I think that's a great idea. You have already started. It sounds like just maybe getting a little more time to implement it.
Oh, okay.
Changes, Steve and I were talking about next week. We've got a full agenda next week. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to take public testimony up front. That public testimony has to be about items that are not before us. Otherwise, we have to drop them into those, you know, different processes for everybody's fair.
So it would be public comments.
What did I say?
Testimonies.
Oh.
Testimony would be for the hearing item. but
Public
comment.
Public comment, thank you. So we'll take public comment up front, and we have, you know, I guess this good of the order is more for us, just to kind of work through things that worked in the day or in the year. And talk about changes or upcoming items as that.
There's just one thing, and I'll come and see you, Jen or Tessa, because when I open up the packet in PDF off of the website, I don't get those bars, so I'll just come and see you.
When you're doing it off the website, you're usually in a viewer, and so sometimes they're in a different location, and every whatever program you're using is always in a different spot.
Okay.
So we'll just have to find where it is.
Okay, thanks. I'll come and see you. Thanks.
Okay, anything else anyone would like to bring up? Just for an overview, so we can be thinking about it before the packet comes up, how many items are we looking at next week?
I think 2, right? I think just the item from tonight and then the
And the continuance.
yeah, the continuance and then the code update, which is just the reorganization, the content neutral, the renumbering, kind of moving things around. So we'll have that one as a formal hearing.
Got it, okay. Cool. Got it, okay. there's nothing else, we'll adjourn.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Thanks.
You didn't want to push it